Hello, everyone, and welcome to part four of our four-part webinar series. You've made it this far with us. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for taking the time out on this special day to be with us. Before we get started, I would like to point out that we do have a question section on the pane. So if you have any questions at any point during this presentation, please feel free to utilize that section, and I'll be sure to pick up your questions and get them answered before the end of this series. Okay, let's get started. So who are we? As we've said during this course of the webinar, and also for our newbies to say, we are APEC Group, a consulting technology and managed service provider with over 20 years of experience in multiple business sectors. And with that, we offer a wide selection of integrated services that helps organizations maximize their performance and allows them to achieve their strategic objectives. We also have a strong sector expertise and technology understanding that makes us an ideal partner for businesses, governments, non-governmental organizations, and specialized agencies. And just to highlight some of our partners, we are a Microsoft partner. We're also partnered with big four companies such as PwC. And as I've mentioned earlier, we also have City of Montreal as one of our clients. And just to name a few out of the country, we have the Republic of Congo as well. So to highlight our expertise and service offerings, we are a technology solution provider. We provide complete Microsoft 365 managed services. This includes Microsoft migration, monitoring, reporting services, and so on and so forth. We also provide tailored digital workplace solutions around Microsoft 365. And with this comes with Intranet in the box that we'll be talking about today, SharePoint portal solution, custom web and mobile applications as well. And through this, we leverage our project management services to help business transform and also provide project leadership and management. And we also leverage our UX and UI design services as well. So to quickly highlight our management team, we have Mr. Amadou Balde, who is our Chief Technology Officer, myself, Yemi Bakri, who is the Managing Partner and Microsoft Practice Lead for APEC. We also have Mr. Pierre Olivier Michard, who is our Chief Operation Officer, and also Mr. Murad Chitui, who is our Chief Product Officer. Today, I'm going to be your presenter. And as I've mentioned, my role with APEC is its Microsoft Practice Lead. My expertise is around project delivery, and I am a SharePoint evangelist as well. I am a Microsoft certified professional and focusing more on SharePoint configuration and administration. Also on APEC side, we have our Microsoft 365 lead, Nan Ying. He's a Microsoft 365 expert, Microsoft Teams expert, and Azure expert. He's also a certified Microsoft professional around SharePoint, its cloud solution, as well as TOGAF certified. Today, our guest speaker is going to be Mr. Juan Larios. He is Creo Spark Senior Product Manager. He also has expertise around Microsoft 365 and also SharePoint. He's also a Microsoft certified professional and also a Microsoft 365 certified professional as well. And we have a guest speaker, Mr. Jose Larios, as a SharePoint consultant. He's also a Microsoft 365 and SharePoint expert, and his competencies is around React.js, AngularJS. Is also, again, a Microsoft 365 consultant that focuses on application development and also the usage of PowerShell. So let us dive in. So we've been talking a lot during this four-part series webinar, but just to kind of highlight what this is about, this four-part series webinar aims to give you insightful information on the topic of exploring successful and engaging intranet strategies with MS Teams and Office 365, now known as Microsoft 365. So last week, Tuesday, May 19th, we kicked off with part one, discussing practical governance for self-servicing in Microsoft Teams, We also talked about tools and automation, and we also demonstrated a Microsoft Teams request app built by leveraging MS Teams, Power Apps, and Power Automate. That was really fun. And then the following Thursday, May 21st, we looked at how Microsoft 365 helped achieve successful intranet strategies by focusing on the state of modern intranets. And we also then explored some out of the box 365 solutions. So this week, on Tuesday, May 26th, we discussed and demonstrated how to supercharge your portal with available open source web part extensions for both SharePoint Online and Microsoft Teams. Post the webinars, we sent out the recording and the slide presentation to all the participants. So if at any point you haven't received it, please do reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to get that across over to you. So today is the grand finale, and we will demonstrate how to achieve an intranet in a box solution by templatizing your intranet and leveraging site designs and also applying process automation. So before we get going, I would like to reiterate that should we not be able to cover all your questions during the course of this webinar series, please feel free to reach out to me directly to schedule a one-on-one free consultation with one of our certified experts. The link to also schedule the same is in the post-webinar thank you emails, should that be more convenient for you. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Juan Larios to take us away.
Perfect. Thank you, Yemi. Can you hear me and see my screen properly?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you for having me again. I'm excited to show you the three demos. I think they'll be very, very useful. So before we take a look at the demos, I wanted to kind of take a bit of a step back and talk a little bit about my experiences with Intranet in a Box. That might give you a little bit of insight into why we've tailored the demos the way we have, and also to think about how intranets in a box kind of behave. So my personal history or professional history really with intranets in a box started with very much the same way as Yemi, designing SharePoint portals, right? Taking this Microsoft engine to provision sites, configure them, tailor them, customize them, templatize them where needed, and build portals for communication, for collaboration, for all things portal related. I then moved to work with a company called Brightstar, which eventually changed its name to Unily, and went from developing portals to delivering a intranet in a box, a solution that someone could install. And the behavior really here was, let's capture the commonalities, the similarities. Obviously, we can't build something unique for every organization, but let's work with this 80-20 rule to make sure that we give customers this 80% of functionality that's common across the board and have it an installable product. Eventually, Unily changed its core platform to being based on SharePoint to something completely independent. So they wanted to control everything. They didn't want to depend on Microsoft updates. They didn't want to depend on the performance and usage and all those things. And so they kind of went their own way, and they wanted to do and really tailor the intranet experience. I then kind of did some more independent consulting, and I came back to work for Powell Software, which is kind of more of a engine, right? It's a way to kind of produce these templates to build portals very quickly, but it was based on the Microsoft platform. So their backend, their kind of foundation was SharePoint Online. I now work for Creo Spark. I'm technically a product manager, so I don't work in the services side anymore. I build products. But the Creo Spark side focuses on Valo intranets. And there's specific reasons why they've chosen to work with Valo intranets. But that's the main platform. Now, both Powell and Valo and other intranets in a box that you might hear about, BZ, there's a ton of them. They either choose to work with the Microsoft platform or go their own separate way. So what have I learned that I think would be good takeaways for you? I've learned that out of all the intranets that I've developed, I've realized that although all intranets are similar, right? They have the similar news and collaboration and HR and departments and project workspaces. They're all similar, but they're also unique, right? There are specific things around a project. There are specific things about a department or different areas that, although we could capture the full kind of generality, we couldn't quite make it unique, and we had to go in and make it unique. So don't depend on an intro in a box to kind of nail it for you. I've also learned that intranets in a box, they're not shortcuts. A lot of organizations are like, well, let's just buy something off the shelf, and that'll solve all of our problems, right? That'll solve our communication problems. And they'll definitely help. They'll give you a head start, but they're not a shortcut for the work that you have to do to really understand your needs, to understand how you're going to use this product to better enable your organization. So they're not shortcuts, and you shouldn't look at them as shortcuts. I've also learned that they don't guarantee success. Some of the best products out there that have all the bells and whistles and have all the functionality, they don't guarantee success. There's much more to a successful launch of an intranet, especially an intranet in a box. Things like a successful kind of organization of a delivery methodology, of a way that you're going to, execute a plan, to communication plans, to onboarding strategy, to how you're going to roll out this and build momentum, and post-delivery analytics and success metrics. How do you now get some metrics to understand usage and usability, and is it hitting the mark, and is it providing good feedback, and feedback mechanisms for people to give you feedback? All of those things are necessary for success, and just an intranet in a box alone isn't going to do that. There's strategy behind the scenes. And the last thing, which is, I think, my biggest takeaway with a lot of the products that are based on Microsoft, intranets in a box that are Microsoft based, meaning they're using SharePoint behind the scenes, and they're really taking and using the best of those features. They have two core principles. One is they fill gaps, right? So if there's something missing in the core SharePoint and Microsoft product, they build these little tools and these little gaps and products, mini products and mini solutions to do that, or they simplify process. Maybe something within the Office platform is a little bit clunky, a little bit difficult, and so they kind of smooth it out, right? They build ways, they build processes to kind of smooth out the bumpiness of that ride. It's a very interesting place to be, because although you're filling in gaps, Microsoft is slowly going to fill those gaps too. So intranets in a box is important to understand that they have to be evolving. They have to be constantly giving you new solutions and new gaps to fill, new processes to simplify, or else Microsoft's just going to cannibalize them, right? So these are the biggest takeaways that I've taken from intranets in a box. Now, the main fundamental piece of a lot of these is giving you these building blocks. And that's why we focus more on the templates and the templatization, because we think that that's really the core value of a lot of these. We've talked about open source little mini solutions that fill these gaps. This is more simplifying a process. So we've kind of focused on that. So we have 3 demos for you, and we wanted to show you how you can use the tools you have now, open source tools as well, to help this self-servicing provisioning. It doesn't have to be difficult, it doesn't have to be grandiose, but it can be a kind of a step, mini steps to get you to where you want to be. So we have 3 demos. The first one will be focused on creating a mini template, creating a site design. And Jose is going to show a very simple example, very do-it-yourself. We're going to do it right on the fly, and you're going to see how easy and simple it is. We're then going to focus on lookbooks. So if you haven't seen lookbooks and you want to kind of understand what that is and how to use them, this is a great little demo for you, very quick, that will give you insight in terms of how how to work with it, what it's doing, and if you've seen it, it's a nice refresher. The third one is a kind of a unique, custom tailored, do-it-yourself template solution. And it's an attempt to show you that you have everything you need really to make this templatization model work for you. It does need, you can take it that step further. You can add some customization. You can do other things, but really the building blocks are there. Now, with that, I am going to turn it over to my brother, Jose. I have the pleasure of being able to work with my brother and share in our careers. And so I thought Jose has done quite a bit of this, and it'd be great to have him showcase some of the features and some of the functionality that we worked with over the last year or so. So I'm going to turn it over to him. One last thing before I turn it over to him is he's going to showcase some open source solutions. I want to make sure that the right people that have built these open source solutions get credit. We'll add them to the PowerPoint and have resources, but we're not really going to mention them by name, but I do want to make sure that they get the right credit because we didn't build these solutions, or at least these little products that we're using them, but know that good, smart people have built these little mini solutions that are open source. So I'll turn that over to Jose now. Go ahead, Jose.
Perfect. Thank you. So I received a little message that my GoToWebinar won't be able to record what's on my screen until I relaunch it because of some security features in my OS. So should I quickly exit and come back in, or should I proceed on? I'm sure it'll show my screen, but it might not record.
Yeah, why don't you do that? And maybe I'll just work off of the first demo. And I'll cover the first demo. Yes?
Sure.
And I'll just log into a little curveball here, but we'll be all right. We'll see how it goes. All right. Okay, so we have here a, Yemi, can you see my screen okay? Yemi? You're on mute. Okay, I'm assuming that you can.
Yes, I can see
Okay.
your screen.
All right,
Sorry, I
perfect.
was on mute. Thanks.
Okay, great. So we have this site, and I'll give you a very simple scenario. We have a site. It's a hub. It just so happens to be a hub. That's not relevant to this demo. We have a directory list. Now, this list is a list with custom columns. It's got a content type behind the scenes. It's got a little bit of logic in terms of the architecture. Now, I don't care about the people that are added here, which is just data, right? What I would like to do is I want to build a template, let's say a department template. So I want every new department to have this list ready to go for usage, okay? Now, eventually what we would like to do is we would like for people to come over here, create a new site, create a communication site, and add that entry in the bottom here, and then be able to create their site. Now, in order for us to do that, what we need to do is we need to build a site design. This is a site design. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you an open source tool called Site Design Studio. And I've already installed it. We're going to provide links. It's really quite nice. So the site design is split into two kind of core principles. Site script. Site script is your doer. What is it going to do? And what we wanted to do is we wanted to create a list. The site design is really a packaging mechanism, right? To put all of the doing scripts together and expose them and being able to use them. So I'm gonna click plus here. I'm gonna create a new site script, and we've got some options here. Now, the whole point is not to show you how this tool works. I just wanna show you how quick and easy it is. We can create a blank one. We can create one from site, but there's this list that I've shown you already that I want to make sure that I absorb here and define it and be able to distribute it. So that one is in my Cloud Spark hub, staff hub, site that I showed you. Then I get this populated with all the lists that come from that site. Now, the list here is Valo user profiles, the list that I want, and I want to add it to the site script. Okay, so what I get here in the middle here on the right is the JSON schema or the JSON data. Now, I don't know about you, but this is not user-friendly. It's not where I want to work. On the left-hand side is the actual kind of representation. So if you look, there's a column, another column, another column, another column. Towards the bottom, we have a content type called Valo User Profiles, and then we have the list. So this kind of did all the work for us, but very easily we could add a new, we could create a new list and have the name of the list and have it be a events list and so on, and just add it, right? It's a nice user friend, and it just kind of prints out on the right-hand side the actual JSON representation. I'll take that away, but there's a ton of other things you can do. Okay, the whole point is not to show you what you can do with this. You can go ahead and explore it. So we have our definition of the list that we want. We're gonna name this, let's call it directory, and save it. So there's my directory. I'm gonna go over to the site design now, and I'm gonna add a new site design. I'm gonna call this department with directory. And I wanna make sure that that's applicable to a communication site. I don't have an image right now, I'll leave that blank. But there's my directory script. I'm gonna go ahead and click directory and save. Okay, so we're done. So let's go back to SharePoint Home, which is here. I'm just going to, let's see if I don't need a refresh. I go here, create a new site. There's my department with directory I just created. Go ahead and click in it. I'm gonna call it HR template, something quick and simple. Now I want you to notice a few things. This is going to create the site, and at the top ribbon, here it's going to appear, it's going to show you the progress. So these are all of the things that I showed you, creating the column, the column, the column, eventually creating everything, and this will finish. It's nice feedback, right, that all of these things are being unpacked and created. If I click the View Updated Site, now if I go to the site contents to take a look at the library, there's my Valo User Profiles list. And there's my columns. So very, very easy. We've templatized basically the list. Now this is a very small example where we can do this. There's more we can add to this script. We can add multiple scripts. You saw there's a wide range of items that we can create, but it's a fundamental start. It's very quick, very easy. In about 2 minutes, we've created a new template. So there's a nice, quick and easy do-it-yourself templatization that you can use for self-servicing. Jose, are you ready to go for the second demo?
Ready to go.
All right, I'll turn it over to you and I'll make you presenter.
Perfect. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, you can see it.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, so what we're going to take a look at now will be the Microsoft Lookbook. So how can we leverage Microsoft's Lookbook to provision new sites? So this is the Lookbook that Microsoft provides. Get inspired. So this, of course, is a freely accessible site hosted by Microsoft. But the question still remains, what is the Lookbook? Well, first, the Lookbook was inspired by conversations with Microsoft partners and customers. They told Microsoft that anytime they had a demo of the latest features, Microsoft had really nice looking sites. They had nice branding, nice web parts, nice content, and they really wanted to access it. They wanted to get the demo sites that Microsoft used into their own environment and test it and try it out. So Microsoft said, I'll allow it. And they did so by providing the Lookbook. The Lookbook really contains a set of site templates with preset configurations and assets that will allow us to quickly get a site we need up and running. So if we scroll down, we're going to see a listing of the site templates that are available. The templates are like organized into groups. like those you might want to use for a department site or a team site, etc. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the organization template called benefits down here. And we're going to see how we can provision this. So I've chosen this simply because it looks a little different. We're going to click on it. It caught my eye with its royal blue, and I want to see how this looks in my environment. On the left-hand side, we're going to see a listing of the features in this template, the web parts used, the content included, as well on the right-hand side, we see a nice image of what it should look like in my environment. So let's add this to our tenant. We're going to click on Add to your tenant. And in a moment, we'll get a provisioning form. So we have a SharePoint provisioning service. And as you can see, we can specify the name of our site and configure its URL. I'm going to keep it as default, the default name and URL, and then click provision at the bottom. We're going to see that it will attempt to validate these settings, and we'll confirm the provisioning. And now it's letting us know that the provisioning has begun and the provisioning is in process. So, this is going to take a few minutes. And so what I'd like to show you is I've already kind of pre-configured a benefit site. And so you can see how it's going to look in your environment. So as you can see here, we have the web parts set up with content already pre-configured in our benefit site. So this is how we can get this into our own SharePoint environment. We can just quickly leverage the templates that that Microsoft has available. And what I'd like to do after this is show you kind of what's going on in the background. So we can see that there's a provisioning status, there's provisioning that's happening in the background. And I want to show you what exactly Microsoft is kind of doing in the background. So what's happening here is that Microsoft has a site somewhere on a Microsoft 365 tenant that they have, and they've taken a snapshot of this site using PNP, which is a library for PowerShell commands. This allows them to even include the content that you see, the images. And all they're doing is through this interface, is launching various technologies in the background, which I'm going to show you in my next demo, and in order to deploy this site template into your tenant. So that will lead me into my last demo here. And first, what I'd like to show you would be how the technologies kind of work. Oh, sorry, actually, what would be better is to show you the site. All right, so let's take a look at this more advanced scenario. This site collection, some of those who are eagle-eyed will be able to tell that we're in a different tenant. This one's called Protovibe. And I'm here in a site collection called Building Hub. This site collection is in fact a hub site. It has two associated hub sites called PGCM and Accounting Finance. Accounting and Finance at the top over here. So let's quickly navigate between these. We'll see we get to a different site collection, Building PGCM, Accounting and Finance, and we'll head back to our Building Hub. So I've used the terms hub site and associated hub sites. Briefly, a SharePoint hub site is a way of connecting and organizing different sites together. For example, maybe you need a collection of departments. You could create disparate site collections for each department and then connect them together to a hub. This will allow them to share common navigation, theme, and importantly, you can search across all the connected site collections instead of just being limited to searching within a single site collection. So in this scenario, we'll consider a need for creating a new site that comes pre-configured as a hub site and includes the associated sites along with shared top navigation here. So in order to do this, however, we're going to need a few other pieces in place. And now I'm going to turn back to our slide to be able to show you what those pieces are. So first, on the left-hand side, we have our site design studio, which Juan showed you, how to create a site script and apply that to a site design. So here we're going to configure an action that will trigger Microsoft Flow. This Microsoft Flow has been configured to send information to our Azure storage. And it's not important, but this information is simply a list of the associated sites that we want to create. We also have the Azure storage configured with a queue, which is like a table that's being monitored by an Azure function. And this function is where we've coded a set of advanced commands that will do a lot of the provisioning for us. These commands directly interact with our SharePoint environment to inspect it and provision the things that we need. So first, let's head back to our Site Design Studio and where we can specify the triggering of this Microsoft Flow. So I have it set up here in its own page. And we're going to create a new site script. We're going to create it from blank. And we're going to add this triggering action. We're going to trigger a flow. And as you can see, it asks us for a little bit of information. So what's the flow's URL? I already have this pre-configured, so I'm just going to fill this out with the URL and the specific flow name that exists in Azure. So I have a URL here, and the flow name is Hub Creator Logic App. All right, and I'm going to name this, and so this will be trigger flow. Let's save it, and then let's apply this to a site design. Create a new site design. We're going to create it as a communication site, and we're going to add in our trigger flow, and I'm going to name it Hub Creator. We're going to go ahead and save that. Okay, so now, as Juan showed, what we want to be able to see is this site design as an option when we create a new site collection. So I'm going to head to my SharePoint home. I'm going to create a new site collection, make sure it's a communication site, and select our new Hub Creator site design. I'm going to call it Coca-Cola Hub, and go ahead and click Finish here. So it's going to create the site and then navigate to it for us. And then what you're going to see at the top here is a view progress notification, and we're going to be able to see what action is being executed right now. You can clearly see that the trigger flow has connected with our Logic app in Azure. And I'm going to go ahead and click on View Updated Site so that we should be able to see here shortly that it is, in fact, a hub. But let's refresh for one moment. So it'll take probably another minute here for it to fully create as a hub site. But what I'd like to do is take this moment to take a look at some of these other technologies that are running in the background, because we've triggered the action, but the action is now triggering a bunch of Azure technologies to provision these configurations within our SharePoint environment. So I'm going to head into my Azure environment, and I've already navigated into my Azure function. And what I'd like to just quickly look over, and this is, as I mentioned, kind of a complex or more advanced coding option, is that we're doing a few things. We're communicating with our SharePoint environment. We want to register the site that triggered this as a hub. We also want to create those associated hubs. So we're going to check whether they exist first. And then if they don't, we're going to create the site. We also want to configure that top navigation. So we have a function for that. And then we want to apply a particular template to it, PMP template. So this is all happening in the background, and this again is being monitored by what's going on in our Azure queue. So this is just an example. These are some PMP commands that I have running in the back here. And what I'd like to do before that is just quickly head into our resource group here, just to take a quick look at the other assets that we've created. So we have the flow, the logic app that is being triggered by our site design. And this is communicating with our storage account, which is being configured with an Azure queue. And we also have the function app, which we just took a look at for those commands, that is kind of monitoring this queue. When a new entry goes in, it'll execute those commands. So that's all the things that are kind of happening in the background when we trigger this, so that when we head to our Coca-Cola hub, and let's refresh, we can see now that it has a top navigation indicative that it is now a hub site. It's been registered as a hub. Now there's still those associated hubs that are still being created and then being added to the top navigation link, but it takes a couple minutes. We don't have a progress for how long that's going to take. And so I've already created one called Pepsi Hub. And so as you can see here, this is created in the exact same process. We applied the site design, and it's already had the time to create those two associated hub sites, PGCM and accounting and finance, and has added them to the top navigation, which is exactly what we're going to expect in a couple of minutes in the Coca-Cola hub. So that's how you can use a more advanced configuration to set up a custom site design for a more tailored experience here. And so I'll switch it back to Nan here so he can summarize this and close out.
Thanks, Jose.
Thank you for the demo. That was very insightful. I'm sure many of you are probably already wondering, how can I tailor this to my company's needs or to my personal user experiences? There are a lot of things we can do. That was just a simple demo. All I did was provision a site based on some predefined scripts. But in real life, we may need to do a bit more than that. One of the more important thing is to add a request or approval process, like you've seen with if you guys joined our first webinar, something similar, where we don't want site sprawl, so we don't want people to be provisioning many sites and hub sites all by themselves. So we could add in a request and approval process, and that could be done through Flow, Power Automate, anything else, even a DevOps pipeline. If you guys, the company has a mature DevOps practice. The other feature that would be very nice is, instead of provisioning it from code, wouldn't it be nice if we could have a process where we have groups of users collaborating to create this template visually in just basic SharePoint design, using the out-of-the-box web interface that Microsoft provided to create a custom site design that people can then provision. So the process would look like several people together create the site pages, the site contents, define the information architecture, the lists, libraries, content types, etc. And then once they're finished, they would be able to trigger a process that would export all of this information as a site script. And that site script would be sitting somewhere in Azure or SharePoint. And then when people want to create based on that template, the provisioning process would be reading from that site script that's already been pre-built. And then that the same group of people who are going to work on the template can continue to work on the template for version 2 or version 3 without impacting user experiences and the provision sites. We can also fine-tune the templates. We can add branding elements, add themes, add headers, so we can tune the PnP PowerShell script in the backend to better align with our needs. That's one way to manage it if we don't want our users to be managing the templates. Lastly, as you've seen in the demo, that this provisioning process could take a while, especially if you have a complex site or large number of sites to provision. So one of the other features that would be very nice is to let users get some feedback on provisioning process. So that could happen in many ways. One is you can have a progress bar on the top, so user can see approximately how far along they are at. Or we can do it the same approach as the lookbooks. When you're provisioning something more complex, you could just get an email notification or a Teams notification when the provision is done, and then that links you right back to your site. So I'm sure you can think of a lot more other improvements and tailoring experiences to this size script, and you're probably going through your head on some of the use cases and how that can apply to your company's intranet or your governance, and all that's valid, which is why we're here, right? We're, as a Microsoft partner, we're well positioned and skilled in doing those improvements and customizations for individual clients. Thank you. I would like to pass back to Yami for questions now.
Thank you so much, Nan, for that finishing statement. I think what we need to do, we do have one more thing that we'd like to share. So at this point, I'm going to pass it to Juan before I conclude and get to our questions.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Yami. Yeah, there's a couple of things I wanted to clarify, and since we have a little bit of time before we turn it over to the questions, I wanted to show you a solution. So I'm going to play this video. It's about a minute long, and I'll just explain what's happening. This is an open source solution written by Sergey, who is a Microsoft MVP. Again, lots of open source stuff. This is an open source solution. I didn't get a chance to install this and configure it, but I wanted to show you it working. And this is part of what Nan was referring to in terms of improvements that can be made. So I hit play here, and he's creating a site design very much the same way we did. They use the trigger flow. They've configured all this stuff in Azure, but they have these 2 or 3 extra pieces. So I want to show you what it does. So when they launch this and they see the progress, they trigger the flow, and they also added this extension. It's a notifying extension. So it's a ribbon thing that will go at the top. And this will communicate with the code that's happening in the background, the Azure function, and will communicate back to the user experience here how far along it is, right? This is really nice to give an end user feedback that there's things still happening in the background that is not done. It's difficult to tell sometimes that something failed, that it is not done, is it done, is it not done? So this is quite nice. So these kinds of enhancements can be done. We created the first part of the demo, but this is kind of a nice little solution, and there's documentation on this. There's the source code for the extension app that's at the top. So it's quite nice, and I thought maybe it'd be nice to kind of see it in action, because we mention it, but it's there. The other thing I wanted to mention just very quickly before we turn it back to Yemi is that there's a decision to be made in terms of what you can do with the site designs and when you need the extra work, which is the Azure queue and the whole kind of script and PNP that Jose was mentioning with the last demo. If you take a look at the actions, there are a lot of things you can do, but there's a lot of things you can't. You know, you want to create a new list, columns, you know, remove, add navigation, join a hub site, add logos, install solutions, you know, trigger the flow, which we talked about, setting branding, adding users to a group. These are the available actions that are available as site designs. Anytime you look beyond this, creating a hub, creating multiple sites, connect them all, do other work and other things, we have to go beyond this, right? And so we can do a lot of what we need, but then you need to take it that step further if you have some more fine-grained features that you want to add. That's why we took you and showed you that one step further. So I thought I'd mention that, and so I'll turn that back now over to Yemi, and then we'll go through questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Juan, for those finishing additional statements. All right, so it is time for questions. I do have a couple of questions here. The first question, actually, let me make sure we are in the. All right. So the first question that I have here is, can anyone download the lookbook? I guess Juan, you can take this.
Yeah. Yes, anybody can go to the site, and what you really do is when you want to deploy any lookbook site, you have to log in, right? You didn't see that because Jose was already logged in. You have to log in, and then what Microsoft does is it takes its templates and its contents and reaches into your environment to do the work. Now, the account that it needs is the account that you log in with. So you have to make sure that your account that you're logging in with has the right access to do the work. But yes, anybody can access the lookbooks and install them, but you need the right access inside your tenant to be able to do the work.
And I think that takes us to the next question, actually. Do I need to be an admin to download the lookbook?
Yeah, so you need at least access to be able to create site collections. That doesn't necessarily make you a SharePoint admin or tenant admin, which are the major roles, right, in Office 365. But you need access to be able to create site collections. So usually that's done by an administrator or someone that has the right access. It's not just an end user activity, right? It needs to be the right person.
Okay. The next question here is the lookbook. Is this for SharePoint Online only, or can this be applied to SharePoint on-prem?
Yeah, as far as I know, not unless you know different. The lookbooks were targeted for Office 365. I think that if you wanted to deploy them to your own tenant, there's probably ways around it. Obviously, you need a certain version of SharePoint on tenant on your on-premise environment to be able to use the lookbooks because they are version specific. I think it's 2016 with a certain version and up that will work. But there's probably ways around it. You probably can't do it directly, but you need an in between from the lookbook to SharePoint Online. Then you can grab them and take them to SharePoint on premise. Now, do you know anything different there? Can you do it directly?
No, there's no way to directly deploy the lookbook into a SharePoint server. So the lookbook are all created with modern sites, and that is only available from SharePoint 29 onwards. So SharePoint 2016 and under only supports classic site collections. So since they're all modern site collections, you would need SharePoint 2019, and you would need to modify the deployment process. So the provisioning process is 2 steps. One is it downloads the scripts, and the other one is it deploys to your tenant. The downloading part should be the same, but the deployment part needs to use a different PNP library. So there's a separate PNP library for SharePoint Online and SharePoint 2019.
Perfect.
So another question that sorry, go ahead, Juan.
So
Finish.
the short of it can be done, but the process needs to be modified. The process that you saw is more tailored for SharePoint Online.
So the next question I have here is, what is PNP?
Yeah. PNP stands for patterns and practices, and it's this big umbrella under Microsoft. PNP usually refers to PowerShell scripts or client-side APIs, that kind of stuff that Microsoft has put out for developers to use and manage and do some work behind the scenes. They also put a lot of the open source documentation and development of these open source apps and web parts under this PNP banner, but it does stand for patterns and practices, and it's a bigger umbrella that has a lot of components to it.
Awesome. Nan, do you want to add to that as well, or should we move on to the next question?
You can move on to the next question. I think Juan explained it very well.
Awesome. Okay, great. And in regards to the lookbook, are there any limitation for GCC or GCCI clients in regards to getting this onto tenants? Are there security limitations?
That's interesting. I have not tried that. I don't know if you have. I can't foresee any security limitations as long as your account that you log into to deploy to your lookbook or to your environment authenticates, you should be good to deploy the lookbook. Usually with government tenants, the security is augmented, right, with two-factor authentication, and of course that can be done straight through the browser. So from logging into the lookbook with your two-factor authentication, it'll be fine. And then there's some restrictions with functionality and API that's been blocked or secured in a certain way in your government tenant. But none of that, as far as I can tell, would affect this PNP deployment. Do you see anything, Nan, that could affect the deployment?
I've seen problems with the one-click deployment with certain third-party MFA tools, such as Duo, which prevents you from authenticating properly. You can get around that by deploying the scripts manually. So there is a manual process that's outside of the one-click that you can use as well.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. So the next question I have here is for the site design web part, how easy is it to download?
Yeah, it's really easy. Now, we didn't show this, but I could. If I can share my screen,
Sure thing.
I would show you that because it's very, very quick. Make presenter. Yeah, so I'll quickly show this. I'll throw it back to. So this is my my app store in my site, and I have in here the site design studio. So in the links that we'll provide, there is a link to this open source, and somewhere in this documentation, there's a nice little button to download this package. And all you do is you take that package and you drop it into your app store, your app catalog store, and then as soon as it's there, you can go to your site, which I have here. And when you go to site contents, you would just add it to as an app like that, and it would be right here. So as soon as you add it to as an app, it makes it available for you as kind of like a new page. So this is the page I created, and it's there. So it really could take you like 5 minutes to install. Very, very easy.
And I think it goes back to what we showed in the steps that we showed in the last webinar series, where we actually mentioned that when you do download these apps, you can actually quickly add it to your organization's app store and deploy to any site collection that you would like to use it.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Juan. Okay, so the next question I have here is, do we have to write those Azure codes to use the trigger flow?
No, so this was the last point that I was mentioning, that the question becomes is what can we do with site scripts and site designs? Where's the limitation, and when do we need to go down this route of this trigger flow and you know, build out the queue and the Azure function and that whole architecture Jose showed? I would look at the site design. There's good documentation online, and in fact, we have some resources in the PowerPoint that you can take in terms of the approach that we took, where it shows you all the available things that you can do with site scripts and site designs, which is a bit of a summary of what I showed you, right, with the actions. The question then becomes is what else do you want to do that's not part of that, right? And so that's when you go that extra step. Now, we didn't show the configuration of the Azure function, of the logic app, of the things that happen there. It's not very complicated, but it's also not trivial. And it's not something we wanted to kind of show you know, during this demo, which just wasn't part of the demo today. But definitely Nan and the APEC group and Jose, I'm sure could, if you wanted to, definitely reach out and we could show you. There's good documentation online as well. But that's when I would make the distinction of when I need those extra steps and when I'm okay with just with site design.
Okay, and this is going to be the last question as we have about six minutes left for this webinar. Is the site designed from GitHub? I know we talked a lot about GitHub being the primary source for open source web extension.
Yeah.
So that's the question. You want to take it?
Oh, sorry. So what was the question?
Is the site design from GitHub? The site
Oh,
design web extension.
yeah,
Is
it
it
is
from
on
GitHub?
GitHub. There in the PowerPoint in the notes there's documentation or the links there. But yes, it's on. If you Google Site Design Studio V2, you'll get to it. It's a Microsoft MVP. His name's Yannick. He developed version 1, and then he also updated to version 2, which is the version 2 is what I showed you to build site designs. So yes, it's open source, it's out there, and then you'll get a package to install the same way I did if you just go to his documentation.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. All right, so we're just gonna take this last few minutes just to kind of round up. So Nan, do you have any finishing statement as we round up our 4-part webinar series?
Thank you. So as a roundup, we've shown all kinds of capabilities in Microsoft 365 and to a lesser extent Azure. So the options are out there. We can create a very robust, user-friendly, all-purpose kind of intranet in a box using the available tools from Azure and Microsoft. And those tools are very powerful and extendable. The most important thing to keep in mind is the cost-benefit analysis, your ROI in creating an intranet yourself versus buying an intranet in box and building one. So we've shown you the tools and basically the Lego pieces that you can use to put together your own intranet in a box. Whether or not you want to go down that path, the decision is up to you, but do consider it because you already paid for the licenses, and a lot of this open source code is out there, and they're available to use and able to deploy in a very short period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nan. And Juan, you as well?
Other than thank you for attending, for being part of this with us. Yemi and I had a vision of kind of what we wanted to present, and this morphed into a 4-part series. We're glad we did it. We're glad we have people that are interested, and hopefully you get good value and insight. I encourage you to reach out to Yemi and the team, and if you have questions, if you have other things that you're interested in that we could launch other webinar series, or if you need help with anything from your SharePoint environment, intranet, or anything we've talked about. So thank you so much, and I'm glad I was a part of it.
Thank you so much, Juan, and thank you, Nan. And you too, Jose, thank you so much for coming on board. This is the end of our 4-part webinar series. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out to meet with us, to go on this journey with us. We hope it's been beneficial and insightful. As I've mentioned earlier, we will be sending out the presentation slides that we've used, as well as our recording. If you have any questions, just like Nan and Juan mentioned, please feel free to reach out to us. Our LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn with the name Oluwayemisi Bakri, my email here listed as well. And we do offer free consultations. So at any point, if you have any questions as you go through solutioning your digital workplace, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to speak with you and also offer you proof of concept just to make sure that you're able to get a good visual of the solution that you're looking to put forth. All right, well, that does it for this webinar series. Thank you again for your time, and everyone have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.